نرحب بكم مجدداً ونبدأ الآن الجلسة الرئيسية بعنوان حوار الحضارات. اسمحوا لي أن أدعو المشاركين في هذه الجلسة للتفضل إلى المسرح.
Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mohammed Rateba. I'm the editor-in-chief of the national newspaper. Do we all read the national newspaper? Yes? Online? Paper? Who still enjoys reading news from the paper? All right. Not bad? Okay, good. So we can survive for a few more years. All right. It's an interesting sector to work in, the media. And there's a big responsibility that comes with people like myself and all my team, who I consider our partners in the newsroom, from the reporter all the way to the senior staff. And the responsibility comes in making sure that we get the news correct, that it's all corroborated, all the facts are correct, and that we are showing the different views of the people and of our community. And today's title is called Dialogue of Civilisations. Now, I am hoping that perhaps media could play a role in bridging gaps rather than pointing fingers or perhaps spreading news that we feel is will get more clicks or more eyeballs. And as you know, the old adage goes, no news is good news. But I think we do have a responsibility to give the full picture. We tell the news as is, objectively, professionally, and of course, we need to support that with views and images of the reaction around that particular news. So back to today's topic, Dialogue of Civilisations, we are looking at the world. The world, we come from different histories, different heritages, with different languages and different religions. And we try to find ways to learn to coexist together. And here media plays an important role in offering a platform to get these voices together so we can all understand and learn from each other. Before I introduce our panelists, our guest speakers for today, I would just like to mention something that a couple of hours ago I tweeted 7 polls using the Twitter poll. So we got some social engagement. If you go on my Twitter handle, you will find about 7 questions out there. If you feel you would like to respond to those, please go ahead. But it was really interesting to get some of the views of our followers and the readers of The National. I will share with you some of the results throughout today's discussion. So let's start by introducing today's speakers. Mrs. Shabana Bhartia, Chairperson of the Hindustan Times Group. Please join us. Please welcome Shabana Bhartia, a leader and head of one of the largest media institutions in India. Thank you for being with us today. Mr. Abdurrahman Al-Rashid, former general manager of Al Arabiya News Channel. Thank you for joining us today. Of course, Al Arabiya Channel is one of the largest Arab media organizations in this part of the world. Thank you all for being here with us today. So I think we had a discussion before coming onto the stage today. And I mentioned something that when I entered the media forum, I noticed that red path, and it said walk for good. And I deliberately took the path. Have we all walked on the red path? No? Some of us perhaps? So can we say that that deliberate physical action that I took might perhaps translate or affect the way I think, in hoping that I would, perhaps my attitude or behavior towards life or news be a bit more positive?
Should I go first?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Actually, I didn't walk the right path because generally in the media, we are all so averse to being on the side and
Yes.
following those who walk on it. So I think it was a natural, instinctive reaction to step out of it and to see who's walking on it. But I hear what you're saying, that if you do walk on it, you do sort of feel more empowered. And so it is, I'm sure it is uplifting too.
Yes.
But I must try it on my way out.
All right. Yeah, fantastic. And Abdurrahman, if you managed to
Yes.
walk the walk.
Is it
Yes.
okay to speak in Arabic, right?
Please go ahead.
Yes. بس انه يعني بحكم اني مواطن صالح
Due
ومتربي
to
على
the
الخطوط
fact
الحمراء والخضراء ما
that
مشيت على
I
الخط الأحمر.
was brought up on the
انتبهتوا
red
يعني.
and
طبيعي
blue lines, I did
تربيتنا
not walk
بشكل
on the
عام
red
الأحمر ما
line.
نمشي ما
This is
نمشي حتى
our
بجنبه.
upbringing, even we do not really
معك
walk
صحيح.
near the red line.
لا
No
هو ننظر
problem.
إلى السلوك ربما
We
السلوك
are
اللي
looking
الواحد
at
يعني
the
يطبقه.
behavior
خلينا
that
نقول
you are
physically يعني ربما
implementing
يؤثر على
physically. Perhaps it might
الفكر نفسه.
affect the
وهذا هو القصد. ونحن
the
طبعاً اليوم
mentality itself.
the theme of today's media forum is media for good. Is, you know, can media be responsible? It is, we are living in a very tumultuous period, particularly in this part of the world, in the Arab region. And we did speak of the perhaps one critical event in world history, which was back in September 11th. Unfortunate event, but it did perhaps disrupt the world order. It made us all think, how are we coexisting? What are the challenges that we are facing, at least then? But now it's 15 years later. Do you feel there's been some kind of progression since then? In terms of, are we willing always to listen from each other? If we are from different backgrounds, from different religions, from different civilizations, is there that tolerance? Can we tolerate each other today more than perhaps 15 years ago? Please, Manu.
Go ahead.
I think 9/11 definitely focused on the fault lines that existed. I think the outcome was measured against the backdrop that perhaps the integration of different societies in different countries had perhaps not happened as best as it should have. I think it's difficult to categorize and say whether we are better off or not. We are better off in the sense of at least understanding issues that pertain to people of diverse backgrounds. But I think the world is going through a very complex time. There's a lot of churning. There are many fault lines. I think it would be oversimplifying to say that things have drastically improved. Yes, security apparatus has improved everywhere. People's perception of what is threat has improved. But there are new fault lines that have surfaced. And that makes one believe whether the kind of political, cultural, and economic integration that needs to happen in every society has indeed happened or not. So we see manifestations like what happened in France, where you had minorities, whether they were African or of Arab region, live on the periphery, not only metaphorically, but in every sense of the word. And I don't know whether the economic and political integration had actually happened. So whereas certain fault lines get taken care of, we are living in a complex world where new ones are actually surfacing. So I think there needs to be better appreciation, and I think therein the role of the media becomes even more important, more so today when we sort of set the context and very often play a kind of a role which is one of unifying, uniting, giving the right context. But I hate to say it, it's our profession, but very often it further polarizes people.
أنا أعتقد يعني إذا بنسوي مسار تاريخي للموضوع هو
If we carry out the historical journey, the problem of the cultural conflicts goes back thousands of years, not hundreds of years or tens of years, but thousands of years. But due to the fact that the societal integration, the different activities, and the immigration between countries and the means of communication and has changed completely, it is normal that there are so many different crises. We can see things in a different manner. We see someone like Trump in the US that plays on the confessional tension, the Mexicans, the Muslims religiously for only electoral purposes. So for him it is only for the elections. Otherwise we see that Sadiq Khan has won the mayor position in London, in a city which is highly populated. To elect Sadiq Khan as a Muslim Asian, this is positive. So we cannot say that people are better or worse. I see that they are worse in one part and good in another. Are the people of London better than those of New York? I don't think that we can categorize them as such, but the notion, the story that people can coexist together, I think that this has a better dimension today. Of course, Riqa is a very bad example that people are being hanged according to the cultural background, and the people are being bombed in Aleppo due to their confessional backgrounds. And of course, in the media, there are conflicts, great conflicts, when it comes to the religious backgrounds and cultural backgrounds and ethnic backgrounds. And of course, I think that we are in a very big state of war that haven't changed.
Today is that social media, I think, played a big role. Every person has the opportunity to voice his or her opinion at will, regardless of that tone of voice, positive, negative, but there is that freedom to choose. I just want to go to the poll on Twitter. The question I posted a couple of hours ago, one of them at least, one of 7, is, can the media play a constructive role in promoting a dialogue of civilizations? So 61% said yes, 16% said no, 23% said sometimes. So pretty much the majority feels optimistic that media and we as leaders in this field can do something to bridge gaps and further a positive narrative. Of course, he just added that over the past 2 hours, I had 49 votes only. So you mentioned Sadiq Khan in London, that new Muslim mayor. Now, he is do we see him as a new Muslim mayor of London, or a new mayor who happened to be a Muslim?
يعني وجهة نظري ما أشوفه أنا مش مهم إنه أنا أشوفه.
It is not important that I see him as a Muslim or a British citizen. The position of being a mayor of London, it is an administrative service-based position, and therefore it has voters. Yes, people has voted for him. The majority that voted for him are non-Muslims. 8 million people in London. 1,400,000 voted for him, and the contester facing Sadiq Khan is a conservative and is from a Jewish family, and the ideological and intellectual conflicts have really different mentalities. They are almost 12 contestants, so this cosmopolitan city is harmonized. I don't have really accurate figures, but the majority who voted for Sadiq Khan are non-Muslims, and normally, but they have causes that want to be achieved, because he spoke of the services and he offered a program, and accordingly he was accepted and voted for. The elections in London, does it really reflect the truth? Of course, London has a tolerant environment, yes, of course, during the past 15 years, since we can say from September 11, 2001. Samuel Huntington, he focused on this issue when he wrote an article afterwards he wrote a book. After the end of the Cold War, 1991, there were conflicts. What will replace the communism? Of course, he said that there will be cultural and religious conflicts in the year 1993, and he expanded his own vision due to the fact that there will be clash of civilization. This clash will be between cultures, and he mentioned that, and he spoke about it. He died in the year 2008, and we are living today. This clash, perhaps it might be more than the fact that there are things that really are working on this. The cultural conflicts are the same, but the means of expression or expressing these clashes are there. The only challenge in the modern societies, how can these conflicts be a positive act, a mean of communication and interaction? We can go to the mosque, to the church, to anywhere to be committed to have cultural activities and to coexist with other people, the people whom you agree with or disagree with. This is the only challenge. He has this mentality that it will be very difficult indeed to put it in a certain framework and to have civilized societies. And there are conflicts that will be ongoing, and he was perhaps right. We shall go back to the organized media and non-organized media and
a question I posted on Twitter.
Talk about it. I go back.
Are views on regional Arab affairs correctly portrayed today? So 22% said yes, but 47% said not really. Again, these came out of just 49 votes over the past 2 hours. 12% said there's some improvement, 19% said more needs to be done. So generally, almost 50% said no, not really. The audience, perhaps, do you feel that today's Arab affairs are correctly portrayed in media? Yes, raise your hand, please. Okay. No? The majority says no in the audience. Can we perhaps talk here about, Shabani, you come from a very multicultural or a massive country, India, over 1.2 billion people living there, different religions, different languages, and a long, long history. And great food, I must say. Great food, great place to visit, and an old historical ties with this part of the world. Sure. Not just the UAE, but the Arab, let's say, context and the Islamic context as a whole. Goes back for at least 1,000 years, maybe more, 1,000 and maybe 500 years ago. What is different in India? How are people tolerating coexisting together peacefully?
I think it really goes back, I'm sorry.
And what can we learn over here?
Yeah. I think it really goes back to the Indian ethos and the Indian culture even before India became an independent republic. But let me just start talking about when India did actually achieve its independence, and enshrined in our constitution at that stage was that we called ourselves a secular state. Why did we do that? Because there was a bitterly fought war. Part of India was carved out, Pakistan was formed. There was a divide on the basis of religious lines. But the founder fathers of India felt it was very important to give a certain sense of security to those Muslims who stayed back in India, that there would be equal treatment for everybody. Everyone would be treated alike. And therefore, we did frame the word secular in our constitution. And India has since then actually upheld that, not just in spirit, but even in law. And we've always had more of an approach which is not really of a melting pot, that this is the Indian culture and everybody has to assimilate and imbibe that culture, and this is our way and our worldview. We don't believe in that. We have more of an approach which is really like a mosaic, which allows people of different diversities, of different cultural identities, of different thought processes to all come together and to live together in harmony in what we call India. Yes. And that approach has now got the support of law as well. Okay. And therefore, even legally, even through governance, there is always a process of trying to ensure that minorities, and by minorities I don't mean only Muslim minorities, but Christian minorities, Muslim minorities, we have Buddhists as well, who may be in the minority because we are a Hindu majority state. But being a Hindu majority state, Hinduism is not a state religion. We have no state religion. We equally sort of observe all the holidays and all the festivities. And we try and ensure that there are equal rights, and we have given equal rights under the law to all the communities that actually exist within the country. And the law applies evenly. So I think India, in a sense, is like a microcosm of the world, because it's almost like a continent, both in terms of its population and in terms of the fact that we have so many diverse and different languages. We have 20 official languages. We have 400 dialects. People in the north are very different to people in the south. So it's actually holding together people of different religious hues, different ethnicities, and holding them together in a federation that allows everyone equality. I think to that extent, it has been a relatively good our rule of law has really had a good track record, I would say. But it is economically trying to empower people and trying to ensure that justice is meted out to people across.
I mean, India is one of the largest economies.
It is.
Right, absolutely. And it's a force to be reckoned with globally. And you said it gives opportunities to everybody. I'm sure there are still fault lines that might emerge at certain moments. How is it usually sort of contained? What is it? You mentioned the Constitution. Perhaps there's a legal framework. How is it usually contained?
Well, there are fault lines, and there are plenty of fault lines. In fact, we saw some recent incidents which we in the media were extremely alarmed by. They are normally contained by the rule of law, by a very independent judiciary, but the media too has a very important role in trying to control and give a context to what's happening, in trying to actually make those in power accountable, because you have different kinds of interest groups, some local who want to polarize and who have actually polarized communities because they are going after vote banks, because they are appealing and appeasing a particular section of society. So it's the media that actually jumps in to try and also contain the fallout. But I have to digress a bit over here and say that, you know, what is the media? The media has undergone a huge change in the last 2 decades, I would say. So when I talk of the media, and I talk of the media trying to contain and limit the damage, I'm really talking of the more known, trusted, larger media groups. But the social media, as we all know, plays a huge role. And in India, you're going to have almost 300 to 500 million people who are going to be going online by 2020 without even going through a computer. Because as economic prosperity has sunk in, it's lifted a lot of people, and the number of smartphone users is actually at all-time high. These people access media with or without the organized media. And very often, sparks that are actually offshoots of wrong propaganda, of rumor mongering, of irresponsible messages being circulated online. And therefore, the role of the more organized media becomes that much more important. In fact, the role is not simply to react to something that may happen, but we are using all kinds of sophisticated tools now which help you sift data, that helps you actually try and spot trends before they become a storm, and to try and give a counter narrative to try and contain those. And I'll just give a small example because I know we want to move on. So recently in a village not very far from Delhi, which is our capital, a rumor started that there were bones found and that somebody had eaten beef. Now India as a country allows and gives you the liberty to eat what you want, to pray to who you want, and to live the kind of life that you want. Now this was a small hamlet where people were extremely conservative. This rumor went online, and before you know it, a Muslim man was accused of eating beef. He was bashed up and he was killed. In fact, rarely do we find mention on page 1 of New York Times. It's always tucked away in Indian coverage, is always inside. This actually made it to page 1 as well, because this man was lynched to death and he was killed. An inquiry was set up, which later found that actually he had not eaten beef. But the point is that this rumor went viral through the social media. People came to the house, burnt his house down, lynched him. So the social media, though it gives you the ability to scale, and though in a sense you can't ignore it, it doesn't come with the kind of accountability that the more trusted brands come with. And therefore, when you said, what do you do as a country to try and contain it? I think the judiciary, of course, has a role, and a huge role, but that happens after an incident has happened. But it's the media that can perhaps try and prevent and intervene even before something happens by trying to gather these kind of disturbing clouds even before it manifests. And for that, we are using more developed tools now in the organized media as well. We use data miner to dig deep into social trends, Twitter, try and follow trends. So I think the role of the organized media also becomes extremely important to play that balancing role.
Absolutely. It seems, I mean, organized media needs a bit more work. Because you've got your staff that are working on, I mean, I know I come from a newsroom and we've got reporters working on investigative journalism or long-form features or reporting. That takes time, perhaps slower than a rumor that starts with just a post on social media that takes just 1 second. Press that button, it's out there, it becomes viral. That requires hours and then days and then a follow-up and there's a race between the two. And we can talk more about that. One of the questions here is on the Twitter poll is, with views so freely expressed on social media, is unmoderated social media doing the region a disservice? So out of 57 votes, 63% no. Do you agree? Does it do a disservice or is it good for the region? Is doing a good job for the region? Yes for good, no? Disservice? The question is, does unmoderated social media, is it doing the region a disservice? It's a disservice? It's not. It's good for the region. So far, it's been positive. It's been driving a positive narrative. Okay, maybe more in the positive, but very close between the two. I mean, that goes back into the challenges that traditional or moderated media face, perhaps, in that race against unmoderated media. And I think a lot of that also, perhaps some of the constant sort of thinking is, we've seen cases, perhaps in Europe, with Charlie Hebdo and the Danish cartoons, where some of that Western media hides, perhaps, or feels needs to be protected by the freedom of speech. So where is that line? You know, responsibility, freedom of speech, making sure the information is out there, but does not provoke further, perhaps, antagonism between different communities and opinions. Abdurrahman, would you like to?
يعني بس عشان أعلق على الكلام اللي حكى السيدة.
I need to really comment India, of course, one of the most important countries, India. When it comes to social coexistence, India, of course, one of the biggest countries and biggest experiences. Our experience in the Arab world is far away and incomparable with the experience, Indian experience, unfortunately. What she has said about the entry of the media and the social media, this has changed in this combination because it is facilitating the issue of igniting the confessionalism and the means of communication, whether media or otherwise, would be a reason to really mess up this societal fabric. Of course, we shall see this. Hopefully things will get better. And of course, India has brought us a person like Mahatma Gandhi, one of the most important persons all over the world, who has spoken about these understandings and principles since the inception and the establishment of India. Regarding the media and the experience of the media, freedoms of expression and so on and so forth, it is not a problem to have freedom of expression, even if we have certain ideas. It is not a problem to be really a follower of each one's party. It is a problem when it comes to acting towards this issue, to use it for his own interest. I think Donald Trump is not racist because the history of Trump says that he employs a number of people of Hispanic origins, and many of his employees from the citizens of New York, Muslims and Jews and otherwise. So he is really, he has no problem in expressing himself. He is an opportunistic. This is worse than being racist. When you are an opportunistic, you will be winning the votes and the elections through infuriating people. And you know that other contestants really are avoiding using these verbs and sentence structures to infuriate the people. This is more than being racist. In the elections of London, this is historical, definitely. There was a contestant or a nominee. He is a conservative and a racist, anti-white, anti-English, anti-everything. He has taken less than 1% of the vote. And we can read in the numbers the social meanings that give true indicators that people have their own ideas, but they do not go to vote according to racist ideas or reasons. And I think that it's the right of people to express their own expressions in a decent manner, of course. But what happened in the modern countries or developed countries, they developed different laws that solve the issue of racism. One of the reasons and problems of the Second World War, in addition to the borders, resources, so on and so forth, there was a racist conflict when it comes to the Second World War and the emergence of Nazis and believing in certain ethnicities, certain national principles that are there. What happened after the Second World War, post-1945, the systems have changed in the Western world. New systems that are based on the fact that defining or clarifying different meanings for the rights and freedoms and duties and responsibilities of the individuals and the practices of the government and the public. It is not the right of the government officials to practice racism one way or the other. The laws have been diversified after 1945. You can be a Nazi and racist, but after taking office in the government or otherwise, you cannot really practice your job with racism. As to our society, the Arab society and the third world countries, the countries that are working on the laws. If you don't have clear-cut laws and regulations that differentiate between the right of expression and the limits of hurting people in the limit of self-expression, amid these conflicts of ethnicities and confessions, and if they are not within the same country, no country in the Arab world, very few that we have seen homogeneous societies, harmonized societies, very few are societies, either they are in schism due to their tribal issues and societal issues. So our Arab societies really are suffering as a result due to these conflicts. In my opinion, if we don't have parties and systems that solve this problem in a civilized manner, I think that the conflicts will increase. The media plays a pivotal role in this issue. The Arab world, can we say that there is a kind of correlation between the level of the media in the Arab world or the Arab mentality. If we level up with the level of journalism and the media, no doubt I think that the issues are different. Of course, there is kind of backwardness on all levels. Even in education, you can have a doctorate and you are a university graduate, but the environment that he lives in do not encourage coexistence in general. I think that the governmental institutions play a very important role. Of course, legislative institutions, cultural institutions play a very important role.
So another question for the audience is, do you feel, and it's back to the previous point in discussion, do you feel media stokes tensions or diffuses them? On Twitter, I got 79% saying it stokes. What are your thoughts? Does it stoke? Inflames? Does it feed the fire? Is that good? No, it doesn't. It diffuses. Oh. Nobody? Okay. I guess the ones that raised their hands, all of them were supporting the stoke, so it does feed. So I don't know, there's a bit of pessimism perhaps on the role of media, that it cannot deliver perhaps on bridging or diffusing tensions out there. What are your thoughts on this, Shambhala? What kind of leadership is needed? First, to convince the audience, no, they could be something different. And why do you think there's that skepticism, perhaps, towards the media industry?
Well, it's disappointing that most people feel that media isn't fulfilling a certain role, or that it's actually stoking or inciting people, because the role of the media should typically be really contrary to that. Yes. I would still say that I would strike a more optimistic note and say that the media is a very sort of it's not a single animal any longer. The media has been totally redefined by the social media. Yes. And in fact, I feel what's happening is actually further entrenching people's worst prejudices, because you have the organized media on the one hand. By organized media, I mean conservative media, I mean titles that are more well entrenched, which are more globally known, which are trusted, and which actually need to align people. But on the other hand, you do have the social media, and what is happening is more and more people get the kind of opinion that they are comfortable with. You get the kind of views that you want to get. Your prejudices are catered to by business models that actually feel it'll give them more search engine optimizations, and therefore all kinds of algorithms are being used to give you the content that you want. And this is really what theorists call the filter bubble. And to my mind, it completely contradicts what the media stands for, because your computer is actually becoming a one-way mirror. It's actually giving you what you want. And it's giving you things that you totally agree with. They conform to your political and your cultural belief. They confirm your opinion, and they construe facts like you like it. But the role of the media is to challenge. The role of the media is to inject plurality. The role of the media is to make you aware of certain things, even if you don't believe in them, or maybe you're blindfolded to them. And that is not happening because of the filter bubble. And I just feel that the same algorithms that orchestrate ads that come to you are now orchestrating content that goes to you. And how scary is that? That you are only getting a one-way view, which makes you more myopic. And to that extent, I think that the media cannot fulfill its role as it's meant to, because it's meant to push the boundaries. It's meant to give you a contra view, a counter-narrative very often. And it's not meant to keep stoking all the kind of issues that you have and to help you. So I just feel that the media's role in the last 10, 15 years, in the short term, this helps. It helps in business models. There are many sections of the media, some even larger ones, if I may say so, in our part of the world, who are actually looking at short-term games. It becomes a whole battle for who gets more TRPs. Those are the rating points that get you revenues. We are all dependent on commercial ad revenues. A lot of the media here is funded by the government, but in our part of the world and in many other areas, the funding comes totally commercially. And therefore, to pander to short-term gains, you actually have the media exacerbating some of these inbuilt prejudices that people have, playing to them, polarizing, and therefore not only are they not playing a useful role, and maybe some of the cynicism comes from there, because sometimes we also frustrated back home when you see a certain channel running away with something, being very economical with the truth, not giving the counter picture, and they're doing it purely for commercial reasons.
Interesting. I mean, even for me as someone who runs an English newspaper, I feel that perhaps we are trying to diffuse, perhaps we are trying to offer a platform with different views and open our readers' eyes to perhaps issues that we feel is important, and it's different perhaps to them. So again, challenging, and that goes to that question I said in Arabic, is elevating perhaps journalism or the standards of the press. Does that elevate thinking? Does that elevate the mindset of communities? Do you feel that's important? Is that the challenge you're looking for?
I think it's totally important. In fact, I think that's a basic obligation of the media, and that's what media stands for. At the end of the day, yes, media has to be commercially viable, but if the media did not have these motives and did not conform or stand for these ideals, then there are other businesses which would give better returns. But it presupposes that the media has to stand for a certain social cause and a certain social charter that it's compelled to fulfill. But sadly, you do see digressions happening in that space. But I believe those are very short-term. I think to have the sustaining power, to be able to have a brand that people can trust, and to have a brand that people can look up to, at the end of the day, I think the sustainability of your media model has to be on editorial independence, editorial integrity, and editorial transparency. Yes. You have to be transparent about what your values are, what your mission is. Yes.
Abdurrahman, would you like to add something?
يعني أظن التحديات غير مألوفة اللي حاصلة على
Among the unprecedented challenges is what we see today, because the media is facing a main issue. Actually, it's a twofold problem. First of all, the media is based on competition among the different media outlets, which requires a lot of new ideas, stories to promote and follow, and it needs to follow the market. It's a market business. And this again for commercial purposes. The second dimension of the problem, despite the fault lines of conventional media, it is still better than the new media, because in conventional media we still have a set of charters and professional standards. Today we no longer have huge media centers where people do their journalistic work, and there is a predominance of this sector in social media, and it's quite impossible to be able to dominate this realm. The alternative to media is to promote ideas today, and there is greater importance to ideas that need to be a source of inspiration. No longer are institutions or writers or people the source of inspiration. If our idea is to fight extremism, is to promote coexistence, to elevate the nation, these are ideas. If we or the society at large was able to adopt these ideas, then the large number of people on social media and in media in general are the ones that are taking on this mission and are fighting the extremist cells that are against coexistence. However, the change that we see in reality is at the level of the institutional structures of media. They are no longer like in the past. The media was told, for instance, that there is no need to attack other religions, other ethnicities, and they could be subjected to sanctions if they did that. Today, this has become very difficult.
أنا أعتقد هذه الحرية نعتبرها أكثر.
طب أستاذ عبد الرحمن، الموضوع إنه يمكن في بيئتنا عدم ثقة في الإعلام العربي جعلهم يلجؤون
the lack
إلى
of trust in Arab media has made people resort to social media, the unregulated social media, because they did not find the realm, the space, or the content that handles some of the issues. Is that correct? And I don't know if the audience agrees that there is a lack of trust in Arab media.
يمكن الأغلب. أوكي تفضل.
أصعب شيء هو زي ما تفضلت
The
شوية
most difficult thing, as you said earlier, is the brand.
مسألة أساسية في أي
The brand
وسيلة
is
علاقة بالأفكار.
essential in any medium that has to do with ideas. A brand is a set of people, of institutions, corporations, and the leaders of society at large. The leaders of society are important, and without the availability of brand within social media, this is happening and developing, but very gradually, and we might need another 10 or 20 years for this to develop properly. I don't have any doubt that at the end of the day things will autocorrect, but at the detriment of what and
we've
when,
got about
that's
just
the
over
question.
5 minutes, and I do have a couple of questions, but perhaps if the audience has questions, this is a good time to... Yes, sir, on the right. الصف الأول. نعم. ويا ريت مختصرة على أساس إن ناخذ
Please keep it brief
عدد
so that we take a larger number of questions if possible.
سؤال قصي البدران. أنا سؤالي للأستاذ عبد الرحمن.
Qusay Badran, my question is to Mr. Abdurrahman. Obviously, the session is about the dialogue of civilization. Are we in a dialogue of civilization or a clash of civilization? And my second question, is this just a motto, a slogan? And most importantly, how can we have a dialogue between civilizations while as countries we are still very weak, and who are we having a dialogue with? Sir?
علي الخشيمان السعودية. أنا أيضا سؤالي للأستاذ عبد الرحمن.
My question is to Mr. Abdurrahman also.
لعلنا يعني لأول مرة نفكر بالطريقة هذه. هل من الممكن
For the first time we think about that,
استخدامنا لكلمة العالم العربي هل هي تعتبر جزء من طائفية أو قومية يعني يجب أن نغيرها؟ عندما نتحدث عن الغرب نحن نتحدث عن الغرب كمنطقة كاملة، لكن لما نتحدث عن العرب نتحدث عن العالم العربي. فهل هذا هو مؤثر بطريقة ما في يعني تشكيل أو تركيز القومية لدينا، وهذا الذي يصعد الثنائيات الأخرى من الطائفية والمناطقية؟
of
الحقيقة أنا يعني
confessionalism, etc.
في خضم صراع مش في خضم حوار.
We are in the middle of conflict and not a dialogue.
والأمثلة كثيرة
and there are many examples to that,
بالغرب والشرق
والمسيحية والإسلام.
حتى في داخل المجتمعات الصغيرة.
Smaller scale, not necessarily between East and West, Christians and Muslims.
هذه في إشكالية كبيرة صراحة.
As for the description of the Arab world, because the Amazigh, the Turkmen, they're not Arabs. The Kurds, even if they are Muslims, they're not Arab. Copts are not Muslims, even if they are Arabs. Therefore, looking for common denominators might be convenient, but these are general terms that do not necessarily indicate anything particular.
هي معنى عام. معظم الدول اليوم تحمل أسماء قديمة لها. ما في هدول
countries still hold their old names like the Balkans, etc. And in general, when we talk about the Arab world, it's not really racist if it is within the preconditions. For instance, in Morocco and Algeria, there is a possibility to communicate in the Amazigh language. Also, the Kurds in Iraq are sometimes allowed to use their dialect as well as Turkmens. So I think part of the dialogue of civilization is to develop also the concept of the political leadership in those countries.
مشعل العباس صحيفة الرؤية.
مشعل العباس الرؤية. My question is to Mr.
برأيك العالم العربي والإسلامي لا زال ينظر إلى الغرب كمنافس يجب الإطاحة به يوما ما؟
Needs to be diminished one day, and my question to Madam.
تفضلي.
Sorry, a question from
My question is to the panel regarding the news and the objectivity of the news. I don't think any of the newspapers or the international channels can stick to the ideals of journalism as such, which was described. Sensationalism, impacting news, human stories, appealing to emotions is definitely on the order. So can any of the panel answer to that?
Thank you for that comment. Sayeda, tafadali.
Hi, Nariman Al-Hashmi, E-Global Generation. I'd like to ask my question and, asking all the panels. Do you think that media is feeding on Clash of Civilization? For example, in Bar Dubai, in Emirates in Dubai here, 20, 30 years ago, we did have like a mosque for Shia, mosque for Sunni, and then further, there was a temple for Hindu people to practice their religion. In Old Mitha, we did have a church for Christian. All they lived together in peace and harmony. But recently, actually like 5 or 10 years ago, we started to notice a really hatred message spreading over the media. They calling each other really in a racist way. They're saying something, like you are Shia, you are Sunni, you are Hindu, you are Christian.
Social media? Or
no, even in the
local,
traditional, yes.
Traditional media?
Yeah, traditional
the Arabic
media.
press? Okay.
The good thing that the government did, it's restrained, these kind of hatred things. But still we can see in one of those important, satellite channels, I don't want to name them, but they're flaming. I mean, they're feeding on this kind of Clash of Civilization. Don't you agree with that?
That's clear. Brief, perhaps, Shubhana or Abdurrahman, would you like to comment? Feeding on objectivity, the challenges of and upholding, such values in journalism. I think on that, perhaps, who was the proprietor as well? I mean, and then feeding on the Clash of Civilisations. I know you mentioned before.
As I mentioned, that there are some who are taking a short-term view, and they feel that they are playing on prejudices of people and giving people what they want to hear. So therefore, we have channels back home, and if we are engaging with China, or if the foreign minister of Pakistan comes against the backdrop of some problem, they create hashtag hypes and they say, supping with the enemy. Now, against that backdrop, those in power, those in politics, cannot go that step forward and take certain actions because of the media hype that's created. So yes, I do agree that some are taking a short-term view and playing on prejudices and creating this sense of uncertainty and being very they're being ultra-ideological. Suddenly we've seen the rise of ultra-hyper-ideological media that's actually catering to a certain small niche segment. But I still do believe that I'm more optimistic. The larger brands which are trusted, I do think are fulfilling a different role.
أي تعليق؟
بالنسبة للإسلام يعني أنا أعتقد الإسلام معتقد، الإسلام ديانة.
For Islam, I think Islam is a belief, is a religion, and is not a national identity. And I think this is the problem with the ambiguous lines.
الإسلام كان هو الديانة في السابق.
Islam was the religion in the past, and with the current descriptions we find, for instance, that they used to be Muslim countries, but that reflected the regions or the tribes that lived in that region. But at present, at the end of the day, in Europe, they were Christian countries. In the US, their leaders had always been Protestants, and now they can get Catholics at the head of the state or Muslims.
أنا أعتقد يعني هنا شوية الاختلاف
With Obama, so I think this is the difference that we are seeing in civilizations and the relations. Islam is a religious identity and not a national identity, and this is the main ambiguity that we see in society that is trying to make religious identities dominate national identities. This is the main issue that leads to sectarianism and that leads to another level of sub-sectarianism, and you keep breaking it down to smaller groups because of our religious belonging. Actually, you can let go of your nationality and go for another nationality, but the religious belief is an integral part of who you are. We are running out of time, but we will take two last questions very brief, please. And I apologize from the organizers for running over. Al-Shlemi, citizens of GCC, my question to the panelists, I think that we have double standards. We always speak very greatly about the Western media. Madam, do you watch BBC Arabic? We're talking about professionalism, about transparency, and this does not exist. We talk about British media, and I was with one of the newspapers. They were investigating a case that goes 2 years back, and they're going to the family. So I think that there are double standards, and this is why there's a lack of trust even in the Western media. Do we need an electronic passport in order to get a social media account so that you can carry all the consequences
when you pass your borders? That's interesting. Is there a way of regulating, perhaps, or giving someone the responsibility of voicing his opinions, I suppose, on social media? We'll start.
Yours.
Yes. Is there double standards from the West, on social media, and the ones who are very active on social media? Do they need to be regulated so that it's all about being constructive and doing what's best, perhaps?
Well, as far as the Western media is concerned, there are huge biases, and those biases keep coming up in various multiple media forums. So just to give you an example, that before the Iraq war, the Western media had already sort of established that there are weapons of mass destruction, and that was what was fed to the rest of the world, and everyone picked that up. Everyone went in with the assumption that there were. You had embedded journalists. Embedded journalists were people who were actually taken by the Western powers to cover what was happening in that country, and therefore the entire account that came was also coming out from embedded journalists. And the so-called established Western press came under a lot of criticism post the war in terms of the biases that they showed in actually first having a preconceived notion and then actually playing out what happened. So yes, there are biases, and it's not to say that the British press or the American press or even many Indian players are beyond that bias. The biases sadly do exist. I just feel that the biases are there, but they are perhaps slightly more regulated. There are fewer biases than what you have on the social media because it's totally unregulated. Now, in terms of trying to control what happens out there, I think I personally am opposed censorship of any form, but I do think that within the law, within what's legal, one should have the right to speech. Having said that, many countries, including our own, came up with a knee-jerk reaction and came up with a very draconian law that was actually a cyber law to prevent those expressing themselves on the social media. Luckily, the Indian courts struck it down, and because of that, it's still pending. So I do believe that that freedom of expression should not be taken away within legal boundaries.
إذا اسمح لي بس أعلق. تفضل. هو يعني في دبل ستاندرد بس الأشياء نسبية في النهاية.
There might be a double standard, but it's relative. What is the number of writers, of newspapers and news that have attacked Sadiq Khan when he participated in the elections because he was Muslim? Very few. So as part of the overall media, we see that the majority had fair practices in dealing with candidates regardless of their religious backgrounds. Obviously, there are certain exceptions because the media reflects society, and all societies have some racism, but I think in the majority of cases, unconventional media practices are regulated and accepted. You talked about working, abiding by the law and freedom under the law. Practically, we rely on laws to define sanctions and taboos, and sometimes, unfortunately, these are needed. One last question.
نسمعك إذا تحب توقف. تفضل.
The speaker is kindly requested
أعلى لو
to
سمحت.
use
إطلاق
the
الحوار.
microphone for translation.
إذا يبدأ الحوار داخل المنطقة في الأول. تفضل، تحب تعيده؟ تفضل.
سعود مشهور، أستاذ
سعود مشهور
بكلية الإعلام والإتصال بجامعة الملك عبد العزيز بجدة. سؤالي بيقول إنه هل في رأيي الخاص هل في رأيك أو في رأيكم أنتم إطلاق الحوار داخل البلدان نفسها هل يكون كخطوة أولى أجدى من إطلاق الحوار مع الآخرين؟
starting point before we start a dialogue with
look inside first
parties
before
abroad.
starting a conversation with other perhaps groups or.
أنا بس يعني أعتقد بالتأكيد يعني هو أصله اللي ما عنده قدرة على يتسامح مع جاره في نفس الحي نفس المدينة
those who are incapable of coexisting and being tolerant to their neighbors in the same district cannot tolerate somebody across overseas or across the
I will take this as
continent.
sort of last words. I really appreciate your presence here with us. It's been a fantastic and engaging discussion. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did and we did here. Perhaps last words on that. Do we need to look inside first?
Oh, absolutely.
Start that dialogue inside.
Absolutely. I think before we look externally, we do need to have alignment and look within and start a dialogue in terms of how the media can play a more positive role. I definitely feel so.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
يعني أنا بظن إنه من نفس منطلق عنوان الندوة
I think that in light of the title of our session, which I think that tolerance, coexistence fall under this title, and this is the main issue for this generation and the next generations of the region. And I think that it's more important to disseminate ideas. This is more important than passing laws, so this should be our priority.
Thank you very, very much for being with us here on the panel. Thank you all for being here.